Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Running Tales podcast. My name is Craig Lewis, and we are part of the Everyday Athlete podcast network, where we aim to tell the extraordinary stories of everyday runners. And we've got something slightly different today because our guest, Dr. Terrence House, is going to tell not only his own story, but the story of a really extraordinary and special runner, Tidye Pickett. Um, First, a little bit of housekeeping before we go any further. As I say, we are part of the Everyday Athlete podcast network. This show is being recorded live, which is why I'm stumbling over every second word. So apologies for that. We're going out live across the Run, Try, Bike social media network. And on Thursday of this week, we will be live as a podcast. Just search for the Everyday Athlete Podcast Network wherever you listen. We're part of a network of, I think it's 9 now, wonderful shows. Some really, really good stuff on there. So please do check it out. Lots of variety, lots of humor, lots of human interest stories, lots and lots of inspiration. So anyway, without any further ado, let's bring today's guest, Dr. Terrence House, forward, because we're going to have a chat about Tidye Pickett. And my word, this is an incredible story, isn't it, Terrence?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Yeah. So I want to start off by just exploring how you got to know this amazing lady, because that in itself is a little bit unusual, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I first encountered Tidye Pickett back when I was an elementary school student. I was a third grade student, and then was called East Chicago Heights, Illinois. Now it's called Fort Heights, Illinois. She was my elementary school principal, and it was rumors going around saying she used to be this huge track star with the United States and things of that nature. And of course, I didn't believe her because, she was the same age as my grandmother. And I was like, yeah, right, and and it was just hard for me to believe that this lady was a track star because she was so old. And so, I did my due diligence as far as research was concerned, and sure enough, she was Olympic track star.
Yeah, and I mean, she was more than just a track star, really, wasn't she? Because she was a trailblazer for African Americans and African American athletes. So I just wonder if we can go back to the start of her story, and we'll develop it all the way up to the Olympic Commission, which is the name of your book that we'll talk about as well. Her getting to the Olympics in the end, but she started off in much more humble surroundings, didn't she?
Yes, and on the south side of Chicago, actually. Um, from the same place as sports stars like Derrick Rose and Antonio Walker and all these good athletes, and way before the civil rights movement even took place in the United States, there was Tidye Pickett and Louise Stokes. And they battled discrimination, be it gender or racial or whatever. They endured some very hard times. And I just thought that doing a book or a documentary on her will keep her name remembered and celebrated along other phenomenal athletes of our time.
Yeah. So, what would life have been like? Perhaps we've got an international audience. Obviously, a lot of us are people are listening over here in the UK. Tidye Pickett isn't as well known as she should be in America. She's well known, but not as well known as I think she deserves. What would life have been like for her growing up, and in terms of the racial situation in the US as well? Just so people have the background on that.
Well, even when she was growing up, and all the barriers that were placed in front of her, be it the 1932 Olympics or whatever, and there's a few teammates didn't want her and Louise on the team, and while they were sleeping, poured a gallon of water on them while they were sleeping or whatever, and nothing was done to the teammates that did such a horrible act or whatever. But she endured, and she showed resilience and courage and stuff like that with the horrible treatment. And growing up, when I met her, that was my first encounter with self-improvement and taking pride in my appearance and higher education.
Yeah, because she'd have grown up in a country which at the time she was growing up was still segregated in many ways, and obviously that treatment she got later that you just explained about was dreadful, but unfortunately it probably wouldn't have been unusual almost.
Yes, like in 1914, the landscape was much different. You know, the uh, the discrimination and the treatment of black people during back then, was much more harsher and much more wicked than it is now. But again, like I said, she endured those things, and she showed great courage and resilience in the face of all that, of the mistreatment and injustice.
And uh, she had plenty of talent, I think. I mean, I've read your biography of her. Perhaps introduce that as well in the answer as well, so people know. I maybe should have done that in the in the intro, but yeah, give that a shout in a second. You explain in that how like everybody knew, even from a young age, that this lady was going to be a talented athlete.
Yes, from her from all of her track meets when she was a young girl. You know, they noticed her agility and her speed and her tenacity, and that's how they noticed and discovered her in Chicago when she was a young girl. You know, just off, competing against local people and stuff like that, and they noticed it was something special about her, and that's how she became the woman that she became in the world of sports.
Yeah, and she obviously moved forward and got that recognition that propelled her, I believe, into contention for the US team. And if I'm right, I think the story was that she and Louise Stokes, who's the other lady you mentioned, they ran the fastest times for the Olympics in, was it 1928?
It was 1932.
For 32, yeah, the 32, yeah, sorry, 36 they ended up going to, 32 they effectively qualified for.
Right.
Um, but despite that, there were two slower white athletes, white ladies who were selected. I mean, can you sort of explain to people how that happened and perhaps what the impact on Tidye Pickett must have been?
Well, there was the 4x100 relay, or was it 1x400? But anyway, they were in a relay team, and they both had qualified, and they were, slated to run the relay. And at the last moment, they were replaced by two white women that didn't even qualify. And of course, they went on to win the Olympic gold, and their dreams were dashed to obtain the Olympic gold. And I think I ain't gonna say I think, but I know from research that they never was able to recapture that opportunity again.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know whether from your conversations as a young schoolboy with your teacher as she would have been then, or from your research, you ever managed to sort of find out how that made her feel, because she'd done this great thing, she'd overcome obstacles, and then it was all thrown back into her face, and she missed out on an opportunity to do something that very few people have a chance to do.
Mhm. The wonderful thing about Miss Pickett is that she never talked about that in a negative way. She never, cried, woe is me, or anything like that. Matter of fact, she never even made mention of how she was mistreated or whatever. But she was, very adamant on self improvement and self pride and appearance and all those things. And I just think that was one of the more remarkable things about it. She didn't uh, carry any grudges or anything like that, despite of what happened to her.
Yeah, and despite that Olympic omission, she made it, didn't she? She made it to those Olympic Games. 4 years later, she carried on training hard and hit her goal.
Yes, yes. And you know, unfortunately, when she was given the opportunity, she broke her foot while competing in the 1936 games.
Hmm.
And and she just never competed again, as far as that's concerned.
Yeah, and I guess obviously after 36, we got into a situation where we had the Second World War and so on. I mean, even at that games, she was watched as a African American woman, as a black woman. She was watched by Adolf Hitler of all people as well. I mean, the things she had to overcome were unbelievable, and then to have 32 taken out of her grasp, and then not to have a chance again because of the World War. The the lady couldn't catch a break.
It's ironic that you say that. And it's like all the opportunities that presents themselves to us even this day that we'd fail to take advantage of. And I think that she showed us how to move in spite of adversity and in spite of injustice and things of that nature. That we have to keep on. We have to keep pushing and being vengeful and being angry and things like that is not the way. You just have to keep trudging ahead.
Were you or are you proud to have been taught by her and to have learned so much from her?
Well, I didn't at the time, of course, but because she was very feisty and she was very direct and she did play. Uh, like I said, I alluded to in my book, I was telling her how she used to line me and my friends up, and if our shirt was untucked, she'd make us tuck our shirt in, and she would take this comb and comb our hair and smell on our armpits to make sure we wasn't smelly and all. I was like, oh, I can't stand this lady. And you say see her coming, but turns out those are things that I kept in the back of my mind and stuff like that. And growing up in such a impoverished area, you know, she planted the seeds for me to even move forward in life.
Yeah, because I mean, your part of your story is obviously that you went on and served in the military and served in Iraq, and it kind of strikes me that some of those qualities of smartness and cleanliness and being respectful of others and your inverted commas superiors are exactly qualities that you would have really needed when you were in the forces.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and just thinking a little bit wider, I suppose, if I can, Terence, about how important Tidye was for African American athletes as a whole, because these days we look at the Olympics and Black and African American athletes are winning an awful lot of gold medals, aren't they? And there are some utterly amazing athletes, and she paved the way for all of them.
Absolutely. If it wasn't for, well, I believe if it wasn't for Tidye Pickett, it wouldn't be, Flojo or Shakari Richardson or Jackie Joyner Kersey and all these great female athletes of our time, of the 21st century, 20th and 21st century. And, but she was more than that. Like I said, she was an educator and she was a mentor and she was like uh, a mother to us or whatever. And she directed a lot of us. Some of us took her advice, some of us did. Those who took her advice, you know, they did well for themselves.
Do you think she gets the as an athlete and as a trailblazer? Do you think she gets the recognition in America and across the world that she deserves?
No, no, not even close. I mean, you read the stories and uh, Jesse Owens stories. They're you know Olympic stories are well documented and stuff like that. But when you mention Tidye Pickett and Louise Stokes, they're like, many people always tell me, I never heard of her before, and this, that, and the other. But, you know, I believe that she deserves to be remembered and celebrated for all her accomplishments, not only on the track and field area, but like I said, in areas of education and race and all those good things.
Yeah, it's really interesting you say that, because I mean, I wrote a piece on the Running Tales Substack about her and Louise Stokes, but before I researched that, I hadn't heard of either of them. Unfortunately, I'm really happy that I have now. But someone like Jesse Owens, I think most people will have heard of, and it's funny how that difference comes across. And I don't know if there's a. I mean, I guess Jesse Owens won races, didn't he? He captured. He was lucky enough to, well, not lucky enough, but you know what I mean. Compared to Tidye Pickett, he got the breaks that allowed him to make the most of his huge talent. But yeah, it's funny how he's remembered so much more, and I wonder if there's an element of black women being even further down the chain of things, particularly at that time.
Yes, what was it, 1914? Was that during the women's suffrage and all that good stuff in America or whatever? So, like I said, it was like a double-edged sword. Not only fighting against racial, injustice, but it was gender injustice as well. And so, for her to be a black woman fighting against all these type of things that were stacked up against her, she withstood all those psychological blows, and she moved forward.
Yeah, and she did get some recognition for the educational work, didn't she? I think the school you went to actually ended up being named after her. Is that correct?
Yes. It went from Woodlawn. It was called Woodlawn Elementary School, and they was changed it to. They named it after her. And one of the things that I always found striking was part of her exclusion from history. When I met her, her name was in her married name, which was, and history remembered her as Tidye A. Pickett, and they didn't remember a Tidye A. Phillips. And that's why I think that's part of the reason why she was excluded in history or whatever, because when you do research, history don't remember a Tidye A. Phillips.
Yeah. And do the pupils, I don't know if you'll know this or not, but do the pupils at the school now, do they know her story? Is that drilled into them now?
I doubt it, because the way, I don't even think the school is still open or whatever.
Right.
But we have a Facebook page for those of us who grew up in East Chicago Heights or Ford Heights or whatever you call it today. That it's not a lot of discussion about her, but we talk about the different characters or teachers that taught us in that school system in school district 169. And we talk about the funny things that happen to us and with us, and about the teachers that there. And sometimes they bring up Tidye A. Pickett and how feisty she was. And she was feisty. She was the queen of feistiness.
So what was she doing? What was she putting you through as a young schoolboy?
Actually, when I first met her, I thought she didn't even like me or whatever, because she came across as so mean. She was just like, if I want to be, look horrible, then let me look horrible. But she wasn't having none of that. And it was, that was the nurturing nature of her. She wanted us to look our best and be our best, and and perform at a very high level. And I think that was a conversion or a transformation from her training to be a track Olympic star. Be at your best at all times.
Yeah. Did she ever teach you any running or any physical education or anything like that, or did she just not get involved in that side of things at school?
No, she was never my teacher. She was my principal. But prior to her becoming the principal of the school, she taught 8th grade at Medgar Evers Elementary. And I used to notice her huge calves when I was a little boy. I was like, her legs were well defined or whatever, and I always wondered where did that come from. And she was just a disciplinarian, almost like a drill sergeant.
I was thinking, actually, I bet you wish sometimes when you're going through some of those fitness tests in the army or whatever that you'd had the chance to be trained not just educationally but physically by a former Olympian.
She was like I said, she was such a disciplinarian or whatever. I think before I was able to articulate, stepping up my game in life and stuff like that, I think it was, you know, that's where the transformation came from. Like I told you earlier, that was the first time I came across a woman with that level of education, because I think she had a master's at the time from Northern Illinois University. And, that was my first encounter with self improvement, because, we just looked any old kind of way in Fort Heights, Illinois. Most of us, some of
Yeah.
us. And she just raised the stakes on all that. Like, you're not going to just look like any old thing or be any old kind of way in this lifetime, not on my watch. And that's what I took away from, having a relationship with her.
And I mean, I obviously don't know what it was like for you growing up, but I'm kind of wondering whether her attitude to the racism, the hazing that she received, had an impact on yourselves as young black children who were potentially the victims of racism yourself. You may not have been, but I'm kind of filling in some gaps.
I wouldn't say I wouldn't say that you're filling the gap, guy. I think you're kind of accurate.
Mm.
I remember in my third grade class, there was an area called mobile units, and they were nothing more than trailers set out. But in the harsh winters in the Chicagoland area, one day I remember in particular where the heat was off in January, February timeframe, and I remember, taking the spelling test and all that stuff with our coats and hats on because it was so cold in the class. But, you know, through her tutelage and through her teaching and through her leadership, we were able to get through those type of things. And so now when hard times arise in life now, I go back to those times and stuff. I say, if I was an 8-year-old boy and I got through that, as a man, I can get through anything.
Mm. And do you think? I mean, this is quite a big philosophical question, I suppose. But do you think, both in terms of perhaps running and athletics, but maybe wider society as well, do you think we are in a better position in terms of race relations and the things that African Americans have to deal with today than we were in Tidye Pickett's time, or is it still a major struggle? And I'll kind of couch that in terms of a comment that I got when I posted about her story originally, and one white guy was like, well, I don't know why you're posting about this stuff doesn't exist anymore, this is all in the past. And I just kind of wanted to get your take on, I know what my take is, but I wanted to get your take on that.
Well, I think that's based on your life experience. You can take these types of things and you can look at the craziness of the world and stuff like that, but you have to look at your own personal, experiences and your current experiences in life, and look at it and say, am I going to let this, just absolutely crush me, or am I going to use this as fuel to forge ahead? And that's how I've always taken life, or whatever. Like I said, again, I go back to that when I was in those cold classrooms, and I was like, if I can get through that, I can get through anything.
Yeah. And how does it make you feel as an African American, looking back on her story, to, she was able, I suppose, to, inverted commas, shrug it off, but you kind of rail against the injustice of it all.
Mm-hmm. I think if I was in her position, I probably would have been vengeful. I probably been angry and stuff like that. But just watching how she moved in life and watching how she moved with the students in the school district and stuff like that, and her race, and her claim to fame as far as in the educational field, as far as teaching and molding and directing and instructing the lives of all of us in school district 169. I was like, that's a template for the ages. If she got through what she got through, how could I lay down on life?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, her story is it's fantastic what she achieved from the the background she had and what she faced. I, I don't know whether anything in your research or your knowledge of her sort of gave you any insight as to how she overcame those things, because I'm just thinking a lot of people, perhaps they might have felt vengeful, but if they were going through some of the hazing that she did, they may just simply have felt like quitting, like giving up, but she
Right,
didn't.
right. Um, Tidye Pickett came from a strong family, mom and dad in the household, and they were very supportive and stuff like that. And I just think, as a race, we have to get back to that, being very supportive and very family structured and stuff like that, and getting away from beating each other across the head anytime we try to do something positive and stuff like that. And I think that was one of the reasons she was able to endure the mistreatment and endure the heartaches and all those things. And I think there's just one thing that, in particular, that uh, our race needs to get back to.
Hmm. And just switching things up slightly, Terrence. Are you? We're obviously the Running Tales podcast. Are you a runner yourself? Have you done a lot of running throughout your life, throughout your military career, or other parts of it?
Yes, we did. Of course, we did the running in the military, but I ran track a little bit. But again, I was like I always talk about uh, when she said when it was said that she was a track star and stuff like that, and she was like, I want to say 5 years older than my maternal grandmother. And I used to always think, I said, well, I never seen my grandmother run anywhere except when to watch episodes of Gunsmoke or Price is Right or something like that. So, you know, it was just hard for me to fathom something like that.
Yeah, yeah. And do you run now? Is running still part of your makeup now, or have you moved on to other things?
I moved on to just being a nerd. I just like to read and stuff like that. I'll run to the library, but
Oh, that's good. Well, that brings us, I guess, onto the book, onto the biography. You've probably sort of touched on this or already, but I guess you met someone inspiring that could have just inspired you, and it could have ended there. What made you think I'm going to go a step further and write a biography of this lady?
well, That's when I was stationed in Vicenza, Italy, and I was, going back and looking over, rewinding the tapes of my life, and I was like, what types of people have come across my path and that inspired me or just lifted me up and stuff like that, and that's where I got the idea to start formulating the ideas to write the book about
Yeah, and that process of research must have been quite incredible as well as you found out more and more about her.
it. Because I used to always wonder, I was like, well, why does she always call me Scorpio? But looking back at it, I was like, she called me Scorpio because, you know, her and I was in the same birth month. She was born on the 3rd, I was born on the 12th, and my youngest daughter was born on the 16th. And it's like, but she died on the 17th, and it's like, well, it must be something to that. It's weird. you know,
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And how much of an inspiration has she continued to be to you even today?
every single day I think about her. I think about, her strength, her her endurance, her courage, and things of that nature. And I just like, again, I like for everyone to remember and celebrate her. Not just in the field of sports, but in education as well.
Hmm. What do you think should be done to celebrate her? Does it need to come from, I don't know, the White House or the some the an athletics association? I don't know what needs to happen, because it sounds like something does.
Well, in the 12th Olympiad, 1932, was held in Los Angeles, California. And that's when
Yeah.
the water was poured on her and all these horrible things, and she was replaced by a woman that didn't even qualify. I would like to see them award her Olympic gold medal after her death. I think that would be more fitting than anything, and show the world how far we've come not just as a nation, but as a global entity.
Yeah, no, I think that, well, that would be that would be an incredible thing if that were to be considered. Are there any sort of members of her family around now who are campaigning or anything like that for her, or anyone really, I suppose?
Not that I'm aware of. I remember when I was in grade school, I knew she had two daughters that I don't remember their names right now, but I haven't seen anything, concretely as far as trying to push for anything of that. But I know Illinois State University, where she ran track, um, they honored her prior to her passing and things like that. And I know that Northern Illinois University as well, where Representative, I want to say Robin Kelly from Illinois and Senator Tammy Duckworth both attended Northern Illinois University as well. And so I think they pay due diligence to her contributions to both the sports and education and stuff like that. But again, they have a hard push to get her recognized on the international level.
And that was before she passed away.
Yes.
It's really nice that she got some recognition, the recognition that she deserved while she was still alive and could enjoy that, because I guess that would have felt to her, like a bit of another breakthrough, really, that she got, that things had maybe changed. She'd gone from that time of being hazed by teammates to being heralded by other people within the community.
Excuse me, what did you say?
I just said, it was good that perhaps she went from that stage of being hazed by her teammates, the victim of racism, to still within her lifetime being heralded by other people within the community and being held up as the icon she was.
Yes. When I was reading some of the articles and I was watching some of the footage, and I was thinking to myself, it's about time. It was way overdue. She deserved it. She earned it, and dedicated a good portion of her early adulthood to the sport. And she just meant so much to so many of us in School District 169 in Fort Heights, Illinois, and during the 1970s and 80s. And she was just such a wonderful inspiration to all of us.
Oh, well, fantastic. Well, it's brilliant that you were able to recognise that achievement, to have her as a principal, and to write this biography. Just if I may, Terrence, I'm just going to try and bring our producer Jason Bahamundi forward from the background. If Jason's there, if he's not run off and grabbed a coffee, he does a habit of doing that, Terrence. But Jason, I just wanted to touch on some of the things we've been mentioning with you as well, because Terrence, what you won't know is Jason's background is as a Puerto Rican kid brought up in New York, as he will describe himself. And I'm just wondering, Jason, as somebody else from a minority, whether some of what you've heard from Terrence today is familiar to you, and whether it, how in your running journey you managed to get over some of those barriers as well. Can you hear me? Oh, he's lost his audio. I don't know if you can hear me now, or whether you want me to repeat that question. Have you all lost me? Oh, no.
Was that question, or was it addressed to me? Hello?
Hello, can anyone hear me? You seem to have lost me. I don't know why that's happened. Terrence can hear me, I think. Jason, Can you hear me?
Yes.
Ah, cool. Right.
I can hear you now.
I'll repeat that question. Sorry about that, everybody. Basically, what I was saying, Jason, was obviously you were a Puerto Rican kid brought up in New York, from a minority background as well. I wondered whether anything that Terrence had been saying has resonated with you, and how that's impacted on your running journey as well.
Yeah, so it's interesting because I present as a white male, and I have been privileged because of how I look, because of that. And obviously Terrence cannot hide the fact that he's African American based on his skin. And so what resonated with me throughout this conversation has been the access that I have had, the ability that I've been granted by others because of how I look. And for a very long time, I hid myself being Puerto Rican. I stuffed it down because I was, I guess I was taught to shrink in a way. My parents didn't realize this, but they moved us out of the Bronx, which was multicultural in so many different ways, to a suburb, which was predominantly white. And all of a sudden, I was no longer going to school with Jose's and Juan's and Terrence's. I was going to school with Tyler's and Kevin's, right? The world was completely different. And I shrunk myself to fit in. And when I started my running journey, I even had family members say to me, "We don't do that stuff." And I was like, "Who's this we? I'm doing it. Like, I'm out here running." And, years later, I started a business in this space. And I started this business with the idea of proving that there's a spot at the starting line for everybody and everybody. And that has not changed. That's been my vision and mission since day one. And so these conversations with Dr. House, talking about Tidye, our relationship partnership with Angela Hollowell and Melanin MVP, they mean the world to me, because I think if we can see other people who look like us participating in swim, bike, and run events, then we'll think, hey, I can participate in swim, bike, and run events. And so in today's world today, I'm talking about being Puerto Rican, and I'm showcasing being Puerto Rican, and I'm, talking about the culture and the heritage and the music and the dancing and the food, because there is a Jason in the Bronx who may not think that he can participate, or maybe my sister's name is Julia, so we pronounce it Julia in Spanish. So maybe there's a Julia in the Bronx who doesn't think that she can do it, and all of a sudden, here's an example of somebody who is doing it.
Yeah, and perhaps a question to you both, I suppose, is that I'm thinking off the back of that, kind of where are we now? I mean, we see a lot of, like I mentioned, we see a lot of African American women and men in the, particularly in the sprint events. But I know, obviously, Jason, you've done triathlon, you're an ultra runner. I'm not sure we see many Black people and people of color in that sphere, and I just wondered what you both kind of made of that, and is that the next Rubicon to cross, if that's the right word?
I'll let Dr. House answer that first, and then I'll give you my take.
Okay. Well, first of all, I think that most of African Americans were sprinters first and above all, but getting to the point where I see, people of color starting to get into the distance running and things of that nature. And I think that's just, a steep, learning curve or physical curve or whatever it is that, we'll eventually get around to it or whatever. But that's not one of our things as far as track and field is concerned. Now I'm starting to see even Black pole vaulters and things of that nature and all this stuff. So like I said, it's a thing of evolving in the sport, so to speak.
Yeah. So I interviewed a gentleman by the name of Shannon Booker yesterday. He's going to have a story in our upcoming digital magazine. And Shannon's history is that he started as a sprinter and found out, by the way, Shannon is African-American male. And he went to the doctor, and the doctor said, "You can't just keep running like this. Like, you need to do it properly." And since then, he told me he has gone on to run in the Marathon World Majors, London, Tokyo, Berlin, and those other events. But it's still, he's one person. He's N equals one. And he said that there's not a lot of representation. And so he has taken it upon himself to be a mentor and a leader for others. He's in Atlanta, and he runs a run club. He's part of a run club to get more African-American men into the sport of running. Jay Tinsley, I believe that's his last name. Jay, I apologize if it's not, who's out in Phoenix. He's the chapter president for Black Men Run. when I was at TRE, there was a Black Men Run panel that was talking about getting more and more African American males into longer distance running. And I hope that those voices continue to be loud and continue to shake up our industry and disrupt it. Like, it's funny, and I don't mean to go off on a tangent here, but one of the things we keep thinking about, or hearing about, I should say, is in the tech world, right? Move fast and break things. We should be doing that as minority groups in endurance sports. We should be moving fast and breaking things and disrupting things and showing up and participating in these events and running in these events and swimming and cycling in these events, and disrupting, right? Everybody talks about disruption in the tech space and in the business world. Let's do it in the endurance sports space too. Angela Hollowell, we just produced her Melanin MVP podcast episode with Yvonne Spencer, who is also retired military, Dr. House, and she has a triathlon club called Fast Chicks, CHIX. And I cannot tell you how often I smile and laugh when that platform posts videos from them getting ready to get into the water at a triathlon, because they got the music pumping, they're dancing, they're smiling, they're laughing, and they're showing that, look, we as Black female athletes can do it too. Come join us. And so I just think if the more we talk about it and the more we disrupt the status quo, the faster we'll see more minorities participating. That being said, we still have to have patience with it too, right? Like, we can't go from one participant to a million participants overnight, right? It's got to be 1 to 2 to 3. But I hope this conversation and others that we have had on our platform rattle the cages and get people out to come and participate in our sports.
Agree.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. I'm actually I'm a white guy from Britain, so I'm going to step out of this slightly if I can, and Terrence, maybe just let you respond to what Jason said there, particularly about the idea of being disruptive, and because in some ways that's what you've done with the book, I guess, and with what you do generally.
Well, I think when we look at most African Americans in the United States, that look at their history, their ancestry, and their heritage, and sometimes it brings great shame and things of that nature. But if you look at it symbolically, and you look at how much money or how much revenue was generated from agriculture and things of that nature, and I think that should carry on to our lives even today. If you keep sowing seeds of greatness and planting the right things at the right time, you have no other choice but to reap a good harvest.
I'm fascinated by what you just said there, actually. If I've understood it, you're talking about people, African Americans, feeling shame about their past. It strikes me that it shouldn't be African Americans feeling the shame about the past. It should be people who look like me.
Well, that's on an individual level, but like from my past experience, anytime you see a family that's from the deep South that has a history of slavery in the family and stuff like that, sometimes it brings about shame, but it can also bring about great pride too. Because like, again, if you look at the whole situation symbolically, and if you have enough patience and you have enough grit and you plant the right seeds in the right fertile soil at the right time, great things will happen.
And that is the very essence of Tidye Pickett's story, isn't it?
Right, that's right.
Yeah. Do you think, Jason, perhaps coming back to you, do you think that this story can really inspire other people from your background, other African Americans, other people of color to go out there and achieve their goals in running, and perhaps more generally?
Yeah, but I think, and I believe Dr. House would attest to this too with his background in marketing, we have to keep talking about it. We have to keep marketing it. We have to keep putting it out there for people to consume. We can't just be like, well, we talked about it once, turn the page and move on to the next thing. We have to continuously put out stories for us in the endurance sports space, of athletes doing these things and accomplishing finish lines, right? I think one of the things that we have lost sight of is this concept of championships. Jamel Hill, who is a sports reporter and writer out of Detroit, commented yesterday or 2 days ago on Twitter that we put so much emphasis on championships, we tend to lose sight of what athletes have done during their careers. So, for example, and I'm making the number up, please don't, hold me to this, but for example, if LeBron James scored 30,000 points, but he didn't win a championship, people would say he was a failure. And it's like, yeah, but he's in the top 10 of scoring in the entire NBA history. I know he's got 40,000 plus at this point. Why aren't we celebrating that? And we're only celebrating championships. And so I think we have to change the conversation a bit when it comes to endurance sports, because the reality is there aren't going to be many people that win an endurance sports event, right? But we have to showcase that the athletes are reaching their finish line. And as Shannon Booker told me yesterday, and I wrote down the quote, he said, no matter what place you come in, you still won. And if we can constantly keep mentioning that, then I think that we'll get people to realize the competition in an endurance sports event is against myself. Sure, I can, beat somebody else, but if I can be better today than I was yesterday, I'm getting ahead, and that translates into life. But we have to keep talking about it. Again, we can't just turn the page. It can't say, thanks, Dr. House, for this interview and conversation. Goodbye. And then never talk to him again. Like, that doesn't work.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I've really taken from this, and I'd just love to see if we can push forward in any way, is kind of the idea of getting Tidye Pickett the recognition she deserves through that 1932 gold medal, because what a thing that would be to achieve for her. And it was taken away from her through everything that's wrong in the world, if you like, and she really deserved that. Sadly, she wouldn't be here to see it, but what a thing that would be to have happen now, I suppose.
Yes, like I said, it would be full circle, but I know that the mayor of Los Angeles is dealing with the fires and all that horrible things that's going on in the area right now. But to have the gold medal, presented to her family there and her descendants and things like that, that will be absolutely wonderful. Wonderful.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Jason, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to let you disappear back into the ether in the background, and no doubt you'll be back presenting one of our other shows on the Everyday Athlete Podcast Network very soon.
Before I take myself off, I want to also reiterate this concept. So February is Black History Month, but that doesn't mean come March 1st we stop talking about Black history. We need to continue to talk about this stuff, even though the calendar changes, because that's how the change is going to take place. If we wait until February 1st of 2026 to start the conversation again, we have failed. We need to continue the conversation. So thanks for having me on as a surprise guest and allowing me to voice my opinions. I'll see you guys soon.
Lovely. Thanks, Jason. And Terrence, I just wondered quickly if before we go anywhere else, if you could just maybe react to that last thing that Jason was saying there about this awareness needs to be a year-round thing, rather than just 1 month of the year where we all celebrate Black awareness or whatever, and then everyone forgets about it again.
Well, I think one of the things that Jason was just alluding to was, it's a thing of not just awareness, but making people aware about the contributions. And it's not in a way to make people feel some type of way or threatened or anything like that, but just to make people, aware of, things that horrible things that people went through, but yet kept a level head and remain decent individuals, and to participate, in life in general. Don't just be a bystander and sit on the sidelines and stuff. Actively participate in life and do something great and make a great contribution to not just your family and community and your race, but to mankind and womankind in general.
Yeah, well, that's what a wonderful sentiment that is. I just before we finish, I obviously want to give you a chance to tell everyone about the book, what it's called, where they can find it, and all that good stuff.
Well, the name of the book is The Olympic Omission, and like we were talking about when the she had her chance to go for Olympic gold. She was omitted and she was, replaced. But it was the story of Tidye Pickett, and it's on Amazon for those who are interested. And I'm also available for public speaking and signings and things of that nature if you're interested or whatever, so that we can keep this conversation going.
Yeah, definitely. Where can people find you, Terrence? We'll make sure we add it to the show notes and everything as well, so they can reach out and have a chat with you about all that.
Okay, that would be great. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So where can they find you? Is there a best email or a best place to look? We can put it out now, and then we'll put it on the show notes as well.
Well, you can find me at thousemba@gmail.com. Again, that's thouse, M as in Michael, boy, apple, @gmail.com. Send me an email, shoot me an email. Let's get together and let's keep this conversation going so that we can change the trajectory of the world as far as world crisis, judgment, and all these horrible things that's going on in the world today. We can change it. We can disrupt all those things.
That's just made me think of one last question. I've kind of asked you the final question, and then something else has popped in my head. This happens far too often. But what do you think of the world today? It's a bit of a controversial world with Trump in the White House and all these other wars around the world. You're talking a positive message, but are we in a world that, I'll try and frame this positively as well, are we in a world that needs that positive message more than ever?
Well, these are things that are not new to us. We've seen all this stuff before. We still have the genes and the seeds of resilience and courage and progress. So these aren't things we haven't seen before. So we'll get, just like we've got through slavery and Jim Crow South, we can get through this as well.
Fantastic. Well, no, that's a fantastic message as well. Dr. Terrence House, thank you so much for coming on today and telling everybody the story of Tidye Pickett. What a fantastic story it is as well. And thank you everybody for listening to another Running Tales podcast. Just finished with a little bit of housekeeping as well. We are part of the Everyday Athlete podcast network. We have 9 different shows. One of the latest that you should listen, if you really like this conversation, is check out Melanin MVP with Angela Hollowell. That's a fantastic podcast as well, and she will be my guest next week on the Running Tales podcast too. We've got all sorts of stuff with Jason. If you were pleased to hear Jason today as well, then you can catch him on a host of other shows too. And I'll be back in 2 weeks as well. So please give us a positive rating, a positive review wherever you listen. If you are a big company out there and fancy sponsoring the show, we're looking for a mainline sponsor. So get in touch about that as well. We'd love to hear from you and be able to keep going, pushing these campaigns, pushing these amazing stories forward. And yeah, thank you so much once again for joining us all to listen to this incredible story and to listen to the Running Tales podcast. Thanks very much. Bye.